Welcome everybody to the June meeting of the Planning Decisions Committee. Yarra Council acknowledges Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as traditional owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. We acknowledge their creative spirit Bunjil, their ancestors and their elders. We acknowledge the strength and resilience of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung who have never ceded sovereignty and retained their strong connections to family, clan and country despite the impacts of European invasion. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations here today and to the elders past, present and future. We've got a whole heap of apologies tonight. Councillor Ho's in Brisbane, Councillor Wade's in Cape Town, and we've got two Melbourne-based apologies, Councillor Davies and Councillor Crossland. So we've only got 5 councillors here, which is the bare minimum quorum. So if any of you want to go to the toilet, use a bucket under the table, because we'll have to close the meeting down while you're in the bathroom. We've got 3 agenda items. Before we go any further, I've acknowledged that all the relevant officers are here. I just got to do a conflict of interest declaration to my colleagues. I'm going to ask you a question. To make a conflict of interest declaration, you may respond, I do, to the following question. Do you declare that you familiarise yourself with the matters being presented to this meeting and that you do not have a conflict of interest? Confirmation of the minutes from the last meeting, 26th of May. Somebody who was there like to move the minutes. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Seconder, Councillor McKenzie. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is passed. We move on to the first business report, which is 5.1. So we're looking obviously at 155 Johnson Street, Fitzroy. What we'll do is we'll hear from 2 people who have registered to speak, and then we'll take questions from councillors to officers and or the applicant or the objector, and then we'll vote on this matter. So first up, we've got Shem Curry from Contour Consultants Australia, representing the applicant. Shem, you're very welcome. Just come up to the front. When you sit down, press the button and you'll have 5 minutes to address the meeting.
That's working. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name's Shem Curry. I'm a director at Contour Consultants. We're the town planning representative for the permit applicant. We're known as Pembroke. Pembroke purchased this site subject to a permit, and they're very excited to deliver this housing project in Fitzroy. It is an amendment to an existing permit, and importantly, Pembroke have gone to a large degree of detail to ensure that the overall building envelope largely remains in accordance with that currently approved. While there are some increases in the dwelling numbers, they are minor, and it's through a rearrangement of the internal floor plates and a change to the diversity of the housing product itself. Importantly, the affordable housing commitment remains as part of the project. The original permit also included a number of streetscape improvements, and that includes a pedestrian pathway widening to Argyle Street, and that's retained as part of this proposal as well. We note there have been 6 objections to the proposal. The objections largely relate to the existing permit or matters that were raised and resolved as part of the existing permit. We note there is one particular objection to the development from the neighbour to the south, which is currently operating as an existing BP petrol station. The matters raised are quite limited. They are with respect to overlooking and equitable development. With respect to this, the proposal has been carefully designed so that that south interface to BP includes screening to prevent overlooking from huddle room windows, which are located within 4.5 metres of the boundary. And where this building is outside of that 4.5 metre provision, there is no requirement under the planning control that requires the screening of those windows. It's really important that we acknowledge equitable development is equal development, equal rights, equal fairness under the planning controls. It would not be equitable to require the permit applicant to provide a greater degree of building separation or a greater degree of screening on this proposal beyond which the planning control requires us to. Importantly, this planning control was also ratified by an independent panel as part of Amendment C271 recently, where that control was supported by that independent panel. The amendment has been considered in detail in totality, and there's been collaboration with planning officers and technical departments through the application process. This included a formal amendment to the application post-advertising to resolve outstanding matters that were raised by those technical departments, and that demonstrates the collaborative nature of this application. We provide our full support to the Planning Officer report and the proposed conditions, and we thank the officers for their efforts. In conclusion, we respectfully request that Council ratify the officer position and issue the amended permit. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Shem. The next speaker is Sue Sukkar from CKA Studio. Welcome, Sue. And it's the same deal. You'll just press the button. You'll have 5 minutes from the second you start talking.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors and the team from Yarra City here tonight. I'm Sue Sukkar, a Director and Town Planner at CKA Studio. I appear here tonight for AA Holdings and the Andrianopoulos family. They own 143 to 153 Johnson Street, the site immediately south of Johnson Street, before you tonight for an amendment that will modify the permit and unreasonably burden our clients' land. Our clients are not new objectors to this development. They were an original objector to the very permit now being amended. They withdrew that objection for one key reason, as the Minister approved 1 April 25. Equitable development was a central issue then, it is a central issue tonight. The amendment before you is submitted with a different architect and on behalf of new owners. It seeks to introduce overlooking across our clients' land from level 4 upwards. South-facing balconies have been re-added and reoriented. Balustrades have been dropped as low as 1 metre and changed from solid to glazed. The rooftop communal open space encroaches closer to our client's land, and the 2 upper levels are full glass looking directly south over our client's site towards the city. The new applicant has walked back the very outcome that resolved our client's objection the first time. That is why we are here tonight. DDO 36 requires development to deliver equitable development outcomes, building separation and a design response that considers the development opportunities of neighbouring land. Not just a separation distance, a design response. These amended plans fail that test. They borrow outlook and amenity from our client's smaller site to secure a city view for their larger site. They have no right to this view, and we say it is opportunistic to rely on our land. We cannot discount or minimise the impact of overlooking should the screening and protection measures currently achieved through this current permit be lifted. And we ask councillors to maintain the outcomes achieved under the existing permit. I understand the new owners, through their consultants, have tried to shift your focus to our client's land and have pointed to massing studies presented to the C271 Standing Advisory Committee. Let me be direct, because that is a distraction. Those studies are not a lodged application. They are not before you tonight. They were a strategic study for a joint submission testing what our client's land could deliver under a proposed performance-based footpath shadow standard between Young Street and Napier Street, and served to inform the conversation as to whether shadow requirements should be mandatory or discretionary. The applicant took no part in that hearing and is speculating about its contents. The attempt to rely on these studies for this application or to rely on them to justify overlooking is both disingenuous and factually inaccurate. Regardless of how the Minister decides 271, our client's land can be developed to at least the same height as this building. So the overlooking this amendment creates is not a is not a hypothetical harm to a hypothetical scheme. It will constrain a real achievable development next door, forcing our clients to set back and screen in response and stripping daylight from their upper levels. That is the definition of an inequitable outcome. I'll be equally clear about what our clients are not asking for. They do not seek any reduction in the building height, not its setbacks, not its yield, not a single dwelling. The applicant's site is large and can fully realise its potential without borrowing amenity from the south. We respectfully request that the overlooking to our southern abuttal be removed by introducing conditions to the permit. We ask the south-facing balconies be screened and heights improved. The south-facing habitable room windows obscure glazed and the rooftop trafficable area returned to its approved setback. The applicant says those levels are compliant because they sit beyond 4.5, but meeting a separation distance is different from an equitable design response, and DDO 36 asks for both. Council and our clients spent considerable time and resources resolving this southern interface the first time. That work should not be undone. I ask you support the officer's recommendation subject to the addition of conditions.
30 seconds.
It costs this development nothing it is entitled to and protects the equitable development of the land next door. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Councillors, are there any questions to officers at this stage? Okay, I've got a suggested way forward, and if there's a seconder, I'll speak to it. So basically, if we can get it on the screen, governance, please. It's a new 2-4 south-facing window. So it's the following changes made to the officer recommendation. South-facing windows of apartments within the western wing, levels 8 and 9, to consist of obscured glazing to full height. The south side of the balconies of the apartments on the southern end of the western wing to consist of 1.7 metre high solid balustrades to prevent overlooking. And finally, reinstate the previous approved southern setback for the trafficable areas of the roof terrace, excluding the landscaped areas. Do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Gomez? So I've got 3 minutes to speak to that. Look, it's really simple. We support this application. We think it will add net value to Johnson Street, to Fitzroy, but we cannot allow it to affect the amenity of what's about to happen on the petrol station site. And all we're asking for here, same height, with no extra setbacks, same number of dwellings, and but without the negative impact to the south and to a future development that's relatively going to happen in a relatively short period. Councillor Gomez, did you want to speak to the matter?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief. I think we're going to see a lot more development in the Fitzroy area, in Yarra in general. I think there's an incentive for all of us to be good neighbours because we're going to be packed in very closely together. I'm convinced by Mayor Jolly's amendments. I think it's reasonable to ask for a little bit of to prevent a little bit of overlooking, and excuse me, and to try and retain some of the protections that we should have. So I endorse this for my fellow
Anyone else want to thank? Sorry, Councillor Gomez. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this matter? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, that is passed as amended. Can the officers please tell both sides what happens from here on in?
A notice of decision to grant a planning permit will be issued to the applicant and the registered objectors. Objectors will have 21 days to appeal at VCAT, and the applicant has 60 days if they're not satisfied with the decision tonight.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who's here for the Johnson Street matter. We'll move on to 3 DTP application reports. The first one is 188 to 202 Swan Street. We've got 2 registered speakers, so can Mimi Musiforo, and please apologies if I've butchered your surname, come to the front. Contour Consultants, representing the applicant. You press that button and you've got 5 minutes from the minute you start talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Jolly and councillors. As you said, my name is Mimi Nutriforo from Contour Consultants, and we're the town planners engaged for this application on behalf of our client. As you've pointed out, this is an application made via the Development Facilitation Program to the Department of Transport and Planning. We've read Council's recommended conditions and your position is understood. And in terms of our role tonight, we're not here to restate the merits of the application. I'm just here to answer any questions or points of clarification that might come up through the course of the evening.
Thank you, Mimi. The next person is Michael Phillipson. Michael, the microphone's on, so you can just kick in straight away, and you get 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. I'm Michael Phillipson, 284 Lennox Street, Richmond. This is basically the objection I sent to the department. The Development Facilitation Program was created during COVID to stimulate the Victorian economy and to create jobs for projects that were shovel-ready to commence within 1 year of the planning permit being issued, or the permit would lapse. We know this has not been the case. The program should not be running in its current secretive format without an avenue for the council or community to object to ministerial decisions. COVID lockdown ended years ago. The scheme in its present form has outlived its useful purpose. It may have had any useful purpose. The building construction in the commercial sector is strong without enough trades to carry out the works, adding to the cost of building, also extending construction times. A slowdown in approvals would help and not be an issue for the Victorian economy or jobs. I call the Development Facilitation Program the developer-friendly program with just cause. Considering my past dealings with the priority project team, the balance of stimulating the Victorian economy and employment has taken precedence over appropriate scrutiny of planning applications. Developers are confident in submitting proposals that greatly exceed planning scheme heights, etc., to the DFP for approval. If the DFP were to approve the proposal, it would set a poor precedent for future development in Precinct 2 of the Swan Street Activity Centre between Church and Lennox Streets. If the proposal's height of 48 metres, that's 14 metres above the proposed height for the precinct, were to be approved, no matter how outstanding the design, makes all the work to produce the C191 planning scheme amendments vision for the area a waste of time for all those who took part, and undermines not only the integrity of the planning scheme, but also the government's development facilitation program. Building setbacks, it is misleading on the drawings. For example, on the proposed west elevation drawing, the setback is taken from the inside of the existing Swan Street boundary wall and to the window line of the upper levels and not the actual building line. This would mean the setback is 19 metres, not 20, and should be corrected to reflect what is required and checked elsewhere. The developer has decided to go down the DFP path where there is no avenue for the community to object the decision made by the Minister and priority project team. Therefore, all envelope aspects of the C191 planning amendment should be followed for this pathway because of the lack of transparency as to how decisions are made, and so that there is no perception of collaboration with the developer. If developers' architects are involved in closed meetings with the DFP's priority team in the decision-making process for any application, it adds to this perception. Question for them, will they be hands off the decision-making process, as are council and residents? The developer's advertising signage in Swan Street for the proposal was unacceptable, lacking appropriate visibility to the passerby. There was only an A3 size notice in the window of number 200 Swan Street, one of the small shops. Considering the 38-metre frontage, there should have been a sign at each end of the site at an appropriate size, standard practice for council advertising. The proposal should be re-advertised. I'm not against the proposal's idea of being mainly apartments or the building's aesthetics. At least there are 4 proper building elevations and no blank precast panel walls that litter Cremorne south of the railway line. I agree with the Planning Department's assessment.
30 seconds.
I agree with the Planning Department's assessment of the proposal, and Council should refuse the application in its present form. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Councillors, have we got? Can you just press that button, please, Michael, before you leave?
Sure.
Thanks very much. Councillors, any questions to officers? Deputy Mayor Harrison, and then Councillor Gomez.
Just a couple of questions. The submitter has raised the issue of notice. Did they meet their obligations, and how many objections were actually received in relation to this application? And I guess you're relying on what was provided to you by the Department of Transport and Planning.
Through you, Chair. DTP requested a list of owner-occupier list in order to carry out notice. We gave them a list of properties which also extended to properties on the southern side of the railway line in Cremorne. I'm not sure the extent to which they did give notice. However, we did receive, or DTP gave me 4 objections.
You had a second question?
Yes, just following on from that, how many properties were on the list that Council provided?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure of the exact number, but it covered quite an extensive area to the north, east and west of the site.
And we have no idea how many they actually notified.
That's correct.
Another question. The submitter's made observations about how DTP is potentially handling these applications. I think he's referring to the pre-application period before the final application has been lodged. Did council officers participate in any meetings in relation to this application?
Through you, Chair, we were given an opportunity to respond as part of the pre-application referral. We raised numerous concerns with the proposal then. The application that was submitted, the formal application submitted, didn't address the concerns raised.
Thank you. Councillor Gomez.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two small questions. What is the actual contribution for the affordable housing component offered by the applicant?
Through you, Chair, the documentation provided to us proposes a monetary contribution of 3% of the overall development cost to a social housing growth fund.
So as a follow-up question, is there a minimum amount that an applicant can provide?
Proposed within a development or a monetary contribution to the satisfaction of the responsible authority.
So just to make that point, if they were to not build any affordable housing and were to offer a monetary component, they could offer $1.
My understanding is it's 3% of the overall development cost. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we're looking for a way forward. Does anybody want to move the officer recommendation? Deputy Mayor Harrison, is there a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie. Deputy Mayor Harrison, your 3 minutes starts now.
Look, I'm not going to say a lot on this. Quite clearly from the questions we've asked this evening and the observations made by the submitter, this has been a very unsatisfactory process. I'm becoming more and more concerned about how these applications are being handled and also the extent to which the recommendations provided by council as the people with our planners with the local knowledge is being ignored in many, many instances. So I'm just putting on the record here about my concerns about the development facilitation program and how these applications are being handled. I note the officer's report. They've done very detailed work on this, despite the fact that council has not received a single dollar in planning application fees for this application. As has been indicated, it's going to result in unsatisfactory outcomes if this planning application goes ahead. So I'm happy to support the officer recommendation this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. In seconding that, I will speak to, so obviously when we do these applications, even if we're refusing them, we have conditions, and I'm pleased to see that we are sticking by our conditions of 10% affordable housing. And in a similar vein to the Deputy Mayor, it is getting a little ridiculous. We have a community that I think is really open to knowing that there's going to need to be change in our community. We have a community that has guided a lot of that change in the past, but building more houses just will not solve the crisis that we are facing with affordable housing. And if we want our city to continue to have the character that it has, which lives in the people who can afford to live in this area, then we need to have more affordable housing. We welcome development, but the constant pushing through and using this clause just to make a contribution to a fund doesn't seem like it fits the social contract that I think the residents of the City of Yarra are willing to be in. And thank you to the officers for preparing this motion. Cheers.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this matter? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Thank you all. What happens from here on in, please, officers?
So officers will write to the Department of Transport and Planning advising them of tonight's resolution.
Thank you. And to save you doing it, that will also be the process for River Street and also for the Vacho site in what do you call it, Sackville Street, Collingwood.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you for everybody who's come for that particular agenda item. You're more than welcome to stay, but we'll move right along to 67 River Street, 43 and 63 to 67 River Street, Richmond, I should say. We've got 4 registered speakers. So the first person is Jack O'Neill, also from Contour. A lot of Contour people here tonight. You're very welcome, of course, always. Please come to the front, and you'll have 5 minutes. Just press that button too, please, sir. Thank you. Welcome, Jack. You can start now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jack O'Neill, also from Contour Consultants this evening. We're representing the permit applicant Seabus Property as part of this application. At the outset, just want to give a thanks to officers this evening, John and the broader team, for their work on this one, and always the opportunity to have an open and transparent conversation about these proposals as they move through. It's always much appreciated. In reviewing the officer's assessment and the material that's been put before councillors this evening, I think there's a general consensus that this is a really important site and a really important piece of work in rehabilitating the last former industrial site abutting the river, and it's really important that we undertake that rehabilitation in the right way. We're here tonight on behalf of our client to answer any questions that councillors may have in relation to the application, and express our commitment to continuing to work with council as we deliver this important project.
So you've got 5 minutes starting from the minute you start talking.
Thank you very much, Chair People, and I've just written some notes. We've been in active opposition of this development for a number of months. We've written petitions to the government and also to the planning ministers and received no response. We've been actively working with council. I'd just like to reiterate a couple of points that we're seeking consideration around, which is particularly around the misrepresentation of the height in the planning permits. Our building is 5 stories, it's not 8, and it is significantly higher, the planning that they have put through. We also have seen when they put the planning applications in, we have incorrect information around which side the building is going to have the height of the 2 towers. They've just got 2 different plans that have been released, so we're unclear around what that actually looks like for residents. And we're also really concerned about the access. This is the right sort of coverage? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was just making sure. And then we're just concerned about the coverage because they're planning to use a joint private laneway that they've misrepresented again as a proper street. It's not. It's a privately owned joint facility between the River Street Riviera building and the NHP building. And they'll have 300 cars, or I think it's 200 car parks going through that premises, which is also our private land. I'm a resident of the Riviera building. So we just wanted to make sure that there's a safety risk there. We already have safety concerns currently with the way that the traffic management works at the minute, trying to exit that car park. We're looking for rectification of that and understanding how that will work in already a busy environment. And then obviously the shadow that the height of this building is going to have over the river. That's also been misrepresented in the environmental plans at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There is shadow across the river. So we're just concerned about the general environment and that once this building is approved, that it sets a new benchmark, particularly around this area. When you look at the buildings around the corner of Victoria Street, they are about 8 stories from the visible level when you're standing on the street premises. For these buildings to be 10 to 12 and a back street of Richmond, it's just not appropriate. So we've been really clear as a group, and we've had over 50 people sign petitions, and we're trying to grassroots the process. We are for supporting access to housing and making sure that that's correct. We want to have a green space. We just want to look at how people access the building, the impact it has on local traffic and the height restriction, and that some of these points have been misrepresented in the council plans. And also local businesses, I don't think, have been made aware of these buildings because I did a door knock and most of the local businesses were not aware of the impacts that was going to have, particularly on parking, which I note I got a letter from you guys today saying that we're paying for parking on Palmer Street, so there will be some obviously changes there, but just wanted to raise that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. The next person is Paul Neild.
Good evening, my name's Paul Neild. I live in a townhouse in the Crown River Street complex, directly next to the location of the Seabus development. I'm here representing my family of 3 and many others from the Crown Street River Street townhouse complex. I've lived in Richmond for just over 30 years. It is close to the city, it is close to the major road arterials, and has the Yarra River encircling it, which allows easy access to the paths for walking, running and cycling. Richmond truly is a unique location. I'm not opposed to development in Richmond. I mean, I wouldn't be living where I am without it. One thing I have noticed over the years is the massive increase in traffic. Last Saturday, I drove to Victoria Gardens via Murphy Street. Despite being only the fourth car in the queue at the lights, I could not get through the lights because traffic was banked up from Victoria Gardens past Hyatt Street. I've also experienced traffic turning from River Street onto Bridge Road, backed up past Palmer Street to Murphy Street during evening weekday peaks as people try to avoid the delays heading south on Burnley Street. With this size of development, the others in the pipeline, it will only get worse. My own two-bedroom household consists of 3 people and 2 cars with only 1 garage space. It could easily be 3 cars. Many modern households require multiple vehicles as both parents work and children need to be transported to school, childcare and other activities. Also, children of tertiary education age and older cannot just use public transport to get around and require a car. 1 car space for each bedroom, and even then it will most likely still be insufficient. With no proposed visitor parking, any visitors to the complex will have to utilise on-street parking. With the proposed 200 apartments, you can expect at least 20 to 40 will have visitors at any given weekend. With very limited street parking, where does CBus think they will park? While encouraging public transport use is a noteworthy goal, the reality is that every single resident will continue to rely on cars for work and family commitments as children stay at home for longer and the number of cars per household increases. The townhouses in the Crown River Street complex are 3 levels, ground, first and second floors. The proposed CBus development has 3 towers, their words. The North Tower, directly fronting Crown Street, is 7 levels, extending to a slightly set back 10 levels. The Central Tower is 12 levels, plus an enclosed rooftop for air conditioning compressor units, which effectively makes this tower 13 levels. CBus, in their renders of the proposal, have specifically ensured they do not show how the North Tower will overlook the Crown Street townhouses and how the 3rd tower of 10 levels will impact the 5-level Riviera complex to the south. They are fully aware how ridiculous towers of these heights are in this location and how the amenity of the existing residents will be negatively impacted. The Riviera complex is 5 levels. There is nothing along River Street that is any higher. Development through this corridor should be complementary. On Monday morning, as I closed my front door, I had a family of noisy miners, do an alarm call. 2 rainbow lorikeets squawked overhead, and as I walked to my car parked on Crown Street, I heard kookaburras. I regularly see yellow-tailed black cockatoos, corellas, currawongs, magpies, sulphur-crested cockatoos and water dragons while walking the path along the Yarra. I have also seen, on occasion, tawny frogmouths. I used to hear bellbirds on my Yarra Path walks as I passed the old Honeywell site by the Victoria Street Bridge, but since the 10-storey developments on the north side of the River Street, of Victoria Street and Abbotsford were built there, they have disappeared. I fear that with the size of the CBus development, we will lose this wildlife. Well, not the evil birds, they will take over the world. We have a state election coming up. There is already pressure on the Labor government from the right-wing media and other popularist vested interests. The outcome of these planning discussions will show everyone whether Labor is a party for your average citizen and the communities we live in.
30 seconds.
Don't waste this opportunity, we will remember. I'm not opposed to development in Richmond. It is a unique and attractive place to live, and continued growth is inevitable. However, development must occur within a broader strategic plan that properly considers traffic, parking, building scale and the cumulative impact on local amenity. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And the last speaker is Elaine Walkley.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I live in the Riviera apartment building in River Street, Richmond. Our apartment is on level 2 in Murphy Street, overlooking the NHP site. and we will be impacted by the construction of the proposed apartment block on the site. Our apartment is north-facing, and when we bought it, one of the main attractions for us was the fact that we were not overlooked and the premises was flooded with natural light. If the building height of the proposed development at 63 to 67 River Street is either 31.6 metres or 41.9 metres, as per the developer's proposal, our apartment will be in constant shade. We will have no view of the sky and will have no privacy whatsoever. We have a lovely garden on our balcony which brings us great joy, and the lack of sunlight will almost certainly impact this negatively. The scale of the development is not in keeping with the context of the area. The building will dominate the surrounding streetscape and overwhelm nearby homes. The majority of apartment buildings along River Street are mid-rise, and a high-rise at this location will be very much out of place. A mid-rise development would be much more in keeping with the ambience of the neighbourhood. Building heights should be restricted to a maximum of 18 metres, with the Murphy and River Street retail premises set back so that additional parking can be provided. Traffic is complete will be horrific and needs to be addressed. We are also concerned about wastewater, noise, soil contamination, stormwater contamination and traffic management of the wider area during the construction phase. In Murphy Street, we had to endure nearly 2 years of disruption during the Hawthorn sewer project, with an increase in traffic, noise and constant dust. A large building project will be even worse and cause even more disruption. I'm not saying we don't need additional housing, but the current residents must be considered when new projects are contemplated. The effect on our lifestyle is important and must be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Councillors, have we got any questions to the officers? We've got a way forward. Deputy Mayor Harrison, just tell us what it is, please, and then we'll see if there's a seconder.
Okay, so my amendment to the officer recommendation covers two things. Firstly, there's been an ongoing issue with overland flow from the NHB electrical site onto Crown Street and the riverbank, which has been raised by residents concerned about the erosion of the riverbank and the impacts on the Yarra Main Trail. Council previously wrote to Parks Victoria about this in 2025. The additional point added to condition 60H seeks to ensure that the construction management plan explicitly stipulates that stormwater runoff to the Yarra River is properly managed during all phases of construction. The other part of this is that this planning application has been referred to Melbourne Water as responsible authority, which has jurisdiction in relation to the riverbank, and it's also been referred to Parks Victoria. I'm advised that Melbourne Water and Parks Victoria are yet to make submissions.
Are you speaking to it at the moment?
No, I'm just trying to explain what it is. So I'm advised that there are these two departments are yet to make submissions about this, and so the information is not being made public. So the additional condition that I've sought to include is to request that these documents be released to submitters when they've been made by Melbourne Water and Parks Victoria. So that's essentially what the two additional things in the amendment are.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Aston. Just before you speak to that, Deputy Mayor, we've got this sort of slightly unusual situation where a councillor who's actually given us apology tonight, Councillor Crossland, has tabled some amendments to this application. We can't accept proxies or, because he's sort of asked, I'm just going to ask you, and it's absolutely your prerogative. Do you want to incorporate these? No, you don't. Okay, well, that's the end of that. Oh, so we're back to now moving and seconding the amended motion. Deputy Mayor Harrison?
Okay, so I concur with the officer's recommendation and assessment of this planning application, specifically that the scale of the development is at odds with the design and development overlay and significant landscape overlay that applies to the site. The scale, height and massing of the proposed development do not respond to the site context, and we've heard a submitter talk about that tonight. The townhouses on one side very low rise, and we've got 5 stories at the Riviera building on the other side of this site. It also doesn't respect the natural Yarra River environs and fails to comply with the relevant provisions of clauses 43.02 of the Design and Development Overlay and also 42.03, the Significant Landscape Overlay of the Yarra Planning Scheme. The proposal will dominate the surrounding streetscapes and will not positively respond to the surrounding context, which is characterised by low-rise townhouse development on Crown and River Street and the Riviera building on the other side. We must have regard to the strategic context. While there is an opportunity for mid-rise development on this site, what is proposed is not appropriate. Finally, as we've heard earlier this evening, this application also proposes a 3% cash contribution to the Social Housing Growth Fund in lieu of affordable housing within the development. Given the identified local housing need for affordable housing, such outcomes should be prioritised. There's no justification for the applicant's failure to incorporate affordable housing in this development. And I'd just like to thank the officers for their work on reviewing this planning application. Like all the planning applications that are being submitted via the Development Facilitation Program pathway, officers and the community have had very little time to provide feedback on this application. So,
other than any development that occurs along the river needs to be done with extreme sensitivity, and I think the officers have addressed that well in their assessment of this application, and I commend Sharon's amendment and hope the other councillors support it.
Any other councillors want to speak on this matter? No? Will we go straight to the vote? All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Thank you, everybody who's come along for the River Street Richmond application. We'll move on to the last agenda item for tonight, 6.3, the use and development for apartment building on the Vacho site, which is in Sackville Street, Collingwood. We have no registered speakers. Are there any questions, councillors, to staff, to planners on this matter? No, I'm quite happy to move the officer recommendation. Councillor Mackenzie will second. So I'll just go straight into that. Look, it's a rare day that I stand in solidarity and support with the planning minister on a planning matter, but in this is one of those instances. I think Vacho is one of the most successful, important and well-managed Aboriginal housing organisations in Australia. We're really, really proud to have it in the city of Yarra. They asked for very little, but what they want to do here with this development, I think, is going to add net value to their organisation, to Yarra, and to Aboriginal people in general. And I just think the officer recommendation is on the money and it should be supported, and we can move on. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jolly. I agree. I think this is a really good outcome for this site. And I'm looking forward to its development. I think of the matters that we dealt with tonight, this is one that we can walk away pleased with.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Councillor Aston.
I'm also very much in favour of this. I just think it's important to note the officer's assurances that with this particular sort of essential rezoning for this particular site, this doesn't set a precedent for similar instances in this particular area, that we're not going to have a flood of other applications for rezoning, and this is a very particular instance.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? No, I won't exercise my right of reply. We'll just go straight to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's passed unanimously. Thank you all for coming, all the officers, the last member of the public there, I think, if you are a member of the public, and of course all the councillors, and we'll close the meeting at 7:16 p.m.